Hello, good evening. It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith. Today's date is Sunday, August 3rd, 2025, and the time is 8:01 p.m. I am in sunny Miami, Florida, on the corner of West Flagler Street and Northwest 35th Avenue. Flagler Street being a historic strip and a popular tourist destination, although it's not exactly a ritzy area. There's a lot of history here, a lot of culture. This is a continuation of part 5 of my ideal population and the weapons technology used to achieve that population lecture. And mind you, part 5 has several subparts to it for various reasons. And this is a continuation of part 5. Now, before I get back into weapons technology, and mind you, this final part is going to be somewhat of a reiteration of some of the pieces of technology that we've spoken about through the first 4 videos. Because some of these weapons deserve a second look with respect to their capacities. Now, before I get into that, I would like to jump in very briefly into something I've mentioned quite a few times over the past month in various videos that I've done, and apply it to some things that I've noticed recently. And just a word to my gang stalkers, particularly the obstructive ones. You ain't talking to a guy that is prepared to let you operate the way you do. When I say to my listeners that gang stalking is a thuggish enterprise, it means precisely that. This is not a noble, classy, or heroic attempt by everyday American citizens to make their country better. As I've said in various articles that I've posted across social media, gang stalkers are not patriots for what they do. This is not patriotic what they do. As a matter of fact, gang stalking is unpatriotic, and I'm going to tell you why. And mind you, this is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, and I'm going to have to raise my voice at various points in time during this lecture, as I like to do them outside, and there is typically background noise of various types, so adjust your volume accordingly. Here's why gang stalkers are not patriots for what they do. It's because ultimately what they're doing is they're using a varied system of signals, cues, physical gestures, street theater, vehicular maneuvers, and other such signals as communication devices that is aimed at doing nothing more than pointing out targeted persons. And the reason they know they're targeted is because there are federal liaisons involved who kind of start the action. And then there's kind of a domino effect with signals until the targeted person is finally approached by a gang stalker in close quarters. This program is unpatriotic because, first of all, its very operation is a fundamental degradation of the United States Constitution. It's a fundamental degradation of state constitutions. And it's a fundamental degradation of inalienable rights. Now, inalienable rights cannot be legally or lawfully taken from a person by any man, woman, child, company, or government legally. Inalienable rights are the rights given to each person by either God or nature. That is the right to be born into this world. That is the right to move about freely. That is the right to pursue your interests as you see fit, so long as those interests are not causing any kind of harm to anybody, such as a domestic terrorist action. For example, the Oklahoma City bombing, which took place on April 19th, 1995. A man by the name of Timothy McVeigh, who was very much obsessed with alternative views of how the world should be, particularly those alternative views of his favorite dissident authors, made a homemade bomb and blew up the Alfred P. Barraw Federal Building in Oklahoma. Killing 168 people, some of which were children. He was executed after 6 years in prison, and his act is considered the quintessential act of domestic terrorism. Timothy McVeigh did not have a right to build an explosive device with that much power, or any amount of power, quite frankly, and detonate it on unsuspecting people. That was an act of terror. Timothy McVeigh did not have the inalienable right to do that. What did Timothy McVeigh have the inalienable right to do? That which any person has, and that is the right to exist, the right to make a living, the right to progeny, the right to their constitutional freedoms. The most basic rights you have are your inalienable rights, and no one can take those from you legally and lawfully. Gang stalkers seek to obstruct a person's inalienable rights on a daily basis. All this program is going to do is make America look terrible. And you know what? You cannot blame the people who are coming forward about this program. And mind you, I'm assuming I'm not the only targeted individual in America. I've never sat down with anybody personally who said, you know what, Emmanuel, I'm a targeted individual. Let's exchange ideas. I've never met a person like that. I have had people contact me on Instagram and say, I enjoy your program, I like your program, I appreciate your program. I myself am a targeted individual, and I have been so for this many years. I have had people come to me with those claims. But mind you, unless I live with a person for several days or weeks and could observe their movements and observe their day-to-day trajectory, okay, observe their biorhythm and that sort of thing, I could never make a determination who else might be a targeted individual at all. I can either take your word for it or not take your word for it. But ultimately, because this program is so disruptive, thuggish, needless, expensive, and quite frankly silly, it doesn't serve the general public. It doesn't serve the public trust. It doesn't help America's image at home or abroad. And quite frankly, and as I've said in various other articles I've written, the United States federal establishment in particular needs to start thinking about the future. 10 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. Does it want people to look back on these times and say, you know what? For America to have allowed the crafting, implementation, ratification, financing, and sustenance of such a program is an example to the rest of humanity as to why America ran an inefficient government. Those are the kinds of lessons that people are going to teach and learn in the future. They're going to look back on this and they're going to say, wow, for a country that built itself for so long as a democracy, as a constitutional republic, as a creditor nation, as a world power, as a kind, compassionate, and caring country, and as a shining city on the hill, as some used to put it, it sure allowed a horrible, violent, thuggish, and needless program to take place in its borders. Those are the kinds of conversations future generations of people are going to have about America. And it's unfortunate because, quite frankly, if you go back to the founding of America to the present day, it's had a pretty neat history, aside from gangstalking and possibly some of the wars that it has instigated overseas. But no person is perfect, so that means no politician is going to be perfect. So no country is going to be perfect. It's just the nature of things. But I'll tell you one thing, it goes beyond not being perfect to allow the implementation of a program like this. And not only that, but use taxpayer resources to keep it going clandestinely with the expectation that no one would ever figure it out. That's called hubris. And that is a dangerous mindset to have when you are responsible for the actual day-to-day lives of other people, as the U.S. federal establishment is, as any federal establishment is. And as the old saying goes, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And that is a universally true statement. Now, before I go on, I'd like to talk about another statement. Right off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly which historical figure said this, but regardless of who said it, it rings true today. I want to say John Adams, who was the second president of the United States, but I also want to say Alexander Hamilton, who was the first chair of the Federal Reserve Bank. I can't remember which of the two said it, or if either of the two said it, but just right off the top of my head, I want to tell you about a statement that was supposedly said by an early political giant of this country. And the saying is this: the reason government exists at all in this country or in any country is because the natural inclination of human beings, of mankind, is to do evil and not good. So in other words, if humans' natural inclination was to do good all the time, you wouldn't need a government because the people would be able to govern themselves. There would be no crime because at its root, crime could lead to bad things happening to people, particularly violent crime, or crimes of deception or that kind of thing. People would be able to govern themselves. They wouldn't need a government. They wouldn't need a military. They wouldn't need law enforcers. They wouldn't need statutes, laws, constitutions. These things are all implemented to prevent people from doing bad things. If you know there's laws on the books and that violating those laws can result in you being penalized by the state, you're less likely to do the things that the law prohibits you from doing. But according to this political theorist, this political scientist, this political giant, because the inclination of mankind is to do evil, meaning from the time a person is born, their inclination is to do bad things to other people. That's the natural inclination of man. So we need laws, we need government so that the people born on this planet have a chance at living their life successfully and safely with a reasonable expectation that they can do so because of the laws in place. Okay? The political scientist Thomas Hobbes said, I believe it was in the 1800s, that this new country, America, is a leviathan. What is a leviathan? A leviathan is a giant creature mentioned in the Holy Bible. We don't know what the creature is. The Bible doesn't specify what the creature is. It just says leviathan. Some people speculate on what a leviathan is in the Bible. Some people think it was a giant whale. Some people think it was a giant shark, like maybe a great white shark. Some people think it was a giant squid. Some people think it was a gigantic alligator. Some people think it was something like a gigantic hippopotamus or something like that. You get the picture. People who speculate on what a leviathan is have their own idea as to what a leviathan is. And they have sort of educated guesses as to what it is. Thomas Hobbes, when he made this comment about America, he didn't even know what a leviathan was, but he knew it was a biblical creature that was possibly ferocious, that was gigantic in size. And it's interesting because when you apply that word leviathan to a government, It implies a lot of things. It implies the government is big. It implies the government is powerful. It implies that the government is intimidating, that it invokes fear, that it invokes awe. But that's what a government has to be if it is to govern millions of people. It's okay to have a healthy fear of your government. But if your government, its representatives, are those beholden to the government in an occupational capacity, use that fear in order to intrude into people's lives for no reason other than to feed their own megalomaniacal ego, well, then that's a problem. That's a problem, and I'm not just talking about a problem for now. It's a problem for tomorrow. It's a problem for next year. It's a problem for the next 10 years. It's a problem for the next 100 years. It's a problem for the next millennium. It's a problem for the ages. Because future governments are going to look back on this and say, you know what? We're going to use the United States of America as a shining example of what not to do. We're going to take gangstalking as a shining example of what not to allow. And we're going to use Emmanuel Isaiah Smith's program, Gangstalking in Action, as a shining example of what a citizen who has had his inalienable rights trampled upon is capable of. And this is going to be embarrassing for the United States. And I hate that because, as I said earlier, the United States has had, especially given its relatively large size and its relatively diverse population, an admirable history. You know, it's always been good at everything, right? The most sought after actors and actresses and the most watched athletes and some of the best clothing brands or the most popular clothing brands and some of the most interesting political narratives all came out of the United States. And let's not forget some of the literature that have come out of the United States. The United States has had some of the world's most sought after novelists and writers. And let's not forget all the interesting technological devices that have come from America. I mean, just look at aviation. The Wright brothers in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, it was the late 18th century or the late 19th century. Were the first men to fly a plane. They built it from scratch and actually flew. And there are apparently no documented instances of human beings flying before then. That happened right here in America. So America's had a lot of really neat things happen. Now you got gangstalking here to ruin all that. And what I'm trying to say is this. Let's say 100 years from now. Because surely the American federal establishment will own up to this by then. Right? Some Congress people may think it's a matter of national security not to say anything about it. That's unfortunate. To me, that shows a lack of character. But if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. It's not going to stop me from talking about it. I have the right under the First Amendment to the Constitution to talk about it. But ultimately, gangstalkers are not patriots, and all they're doing is ruining America's legacy one day at a time. And the people who orchestrate this foolishness, they are the masterminds of the ruin of America's image at home and abroad. Now I'm going to talk about this oath of service that I brought up, and I've said it again and again and again. If you are a person that has been indexed to my daily movements and you have taken an oath of service to a state or government and you have been assigned to me for monitoring by that state or government, I am not terribly opposed to you because you are going to witness the truth. Now, I've also said that there are Joe Schmoes out there that practice gang stalking and that have probably come in close contact with me through the signaling mechanism. You all are interesting, particularly the ones that walk around wearing disguises. And if you're one that knew me from years back, decades back, and you're popping up now, not necessarily in my best interest, I'm going to tell you like I told the zoo animal undercovers that are trying to get me sick or harmed, and that's get lost. You're not doing anything positive, and quite frankly, your presence around me is not doing anything but wasting your time and making my trajectory, my day-to-day trajectory, more difficult, because there are gang stalkers around you that are putting themselves in close quarters to me on your behalf. And it's intensifying my annoyance. Also, I'd like to say to anyone who has taken a temporary oath of service just so you can surveil me to be nosy or obstructive, because as I've said, if you sworn a oath of service, I should have said if you sworn a real oath of service or an occupational oath of service, okay, the kind of oath of service that you need to do your job, okay, your paid job, your occupation, then you're welcome to surveil me because you will see the truth. Now, that excludes anyone who might be in an undercover capacity who has taken an oath of service. And yeah, there are stipulations here. You're talking about somebody's inalienable rights here. So if you work in an undercover capacity and you have taken an oath of service at some point, but you're using that oath of service to try and obstruct, harass, annoy, or harm me, I'm going to tell you, like I'm telling the people who keep popping up out of nowhere, get lost because you're not welcome. Those who have taken an oath of service that have a high ideal, a noble ideal, a reasonable ideal, or a suitable ideal for the study of gang stalking, you're welcome to surveil me because, you know what? That's something worthwhile. But if you are some nitwit, punk, harasser that is just either just taking orders or you are giving orders to harass or whatever it is you're doing, I'm telling you to get lost. Now, I know you don't have to if the state or the federal establishment of this country has given you leeway to do that. You probably say, well, I don't care if you like it or not. I have a state writ or a federal writ that allows me to surveil you and disrupt you. I don't care if you don't like it or not. That's fine. You're using the power of the state to engage in ape-like behavior, and that's on you. But I'm going to keep talking out against it, and you know what? It's not going to make America look good in the future. All right? So you so-called patriots that do gang stalking, you need to think of that. And if you've taken a temporary oath of service just so you can get near me, just find something better to do with your time. All right. So we're going to get back into technology. I had to say that because, quite frankly, it needed to be said. So back to the weapons technology that are used in gang stalking campaigns. Mind you, these are military industrial grade weapons. A lot of them use frequency. A lot of them use radiation. A lot of them use the spectrum. Okay? And many of them can cause harm to a person invisibly, because you can't see radiation, you can't see ultra low frequencies, you can't see various frequency based weapons, some of which are used on targeted persons to alter their brain activity through the manipulation of the electronic impulses that happen in your brain and in your heart. If these are used on a person for a long enough period of time, the psychological effect can be vast, even to the point of changing that person's very personality if you manipulate their brain waves enough. And mind you, those brain waves can be manipulated using ultra low frequencies and so forth. And you can't see frequencies. They're invisible weapons. I mean, these are the types of things you should use on the battlefield, not on unsuspecting citizens, especially if you're doing it to harm them. As I've said before, every piece of technology that I've talked about over the past 4 videos, if used responsibly, can benefit humanity. But if used irresponsibly, it can be a detriment to humanity, a detriment to America's legacy, and quite frankly, a detriment to the entire populace of planet Earth. So, gyrotron. A gyrotron is a specialized vacuum electronic device that generates high power, high frequency electromagnetic radiation, particularly in the sub-millimeter and millimeter wave range. It utilizes the principle of simulated cyclotron resonance of electrons moving within a strong magnetic field. These devices are crucial for applications like plasma heating and fusion reactors, and have potential uses in advanced communication in other areas. The primary potential effect of high-powered gyrotron radiation on humans is the heating of body tissues. Similar to microwaves, high level of exposure can cause burns and potentially cataracts, especially with areas with limited blood flow like the eyes and testes. It is important to note that the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection has established guidelines to limit exposure to electromagnetic fields within the frequency range of 100 kilohertz to 300 gigahertz. These guidelines are reflected in regulations for radio wave exposure. With the increasing use of gyrotrons and next-generation devices such as body scanners and wireless communication systems, operating at frequencies like 600 gigahertz through safety assessment of these higher frequencies is needed. So essentially what you're talking about with a gyrotron is it is a device that generates electromagnetic radiation, which is something you cannot see, smell, or hear. Now, what is so dangerous about a weapon that emits electromagnetic radiation? It's simply that. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't hear it. But it affects your body at the molecular level. So if you were to use an electromagnetic device like a gyrotron on a human being for an extended period of time, it can cause cataracts, which can lead to blindness, and it can cause you reproductive harm in males. So you have weapons like this flying around, okay? Gyrotrons. It uses electromagnetic radiation to cause health problems in people. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, these things are being used on the American public right now. These things are being used on targeted individuals right now. It's coming out of taxpayer money, and you are not being told that weapons like this are being used against the American populace. right. And we're going to scroll down this document that I've typed up. Okay, we're kind of on the home stretch with these. But I'd like to say again, because a target individual has 24-hour sound surveillance, as well as 24-hour video surveillance. And mind you, with a targeted person, the people surveilling you. Now, I know I have multiple parties surveilling me. I'm not going to say all of them are gang stalkers, but at least one of the parties that is surveilling me constantly is. And they are capable of mobilizing mobs of nitwit, scumbag, jerk, creep, and really any other negative adjective you could think of. Violent, hostile, all right, people to your exact location, anytime, anywhere. And they don't need court's permission to do it. They simply have the extrajudicial power to do that to a person, and they exercise that power endlessly and without provocation. And as I've said in previous videos, if any of you that practice that mobilization mechanism, have the fortitude to come to me right now, tonight, on West Flagler and 75th in Miami, Florida, and show me your credentials, then do it. Otherwise, I'm going to keep calling you a hostile agitator, because that's what you are. All right, neuroprosthetics. This involves gradually replacing biological brain components with artificial ones, potentially leading to a fully digital mind. Now, this may surprise you, but this actually looks like a good prospect, okay? Imagine a human mind that was able to operate digitally. Now, this right here, this particular technological device, it doesn't exist per se, but it's something that's being explored in the we'll call it in the world of technology innovation. And imagine if a human mind had constant access to digital components. How much clearer thinking and how less problematic humans would be. Scanning and copying. This involves creating detailed scans of the brain, understanding its structure and function, and then emulating or replicating it in a computer. The challenges and considerations are the immense complexity of the human brain with billions of neurons and trillions of connections. It's unclear if simply replicating the brain structure is enough to recreate consciousness or if there are other essential factors involved. For a digital mind to be truly functional, it would likely need to interact with a simulated environment that provides sensory input. And it raises profound ethical questions about identity, personhood, and the nature of consciousness. And there is a thing that is being explored called thought amplifying or thought amplification. It's basically artificial intelligence as a thought amplifier. The concept of thought amplifying refers to the use of technology to enhance human cognitive abilities rather than replace them. It is a field of AI and human-computer interaction that focuses on creating a symbiotic relationship between humans and machines to achieve better decision-making, problem-solving, and learning. So, the digitization of the human mind is what we're talking about here, okay? Using devices like, for example, neuroprosthetics and then applying a method like scanning and copying to achieve a fuller understanding of the human brain and thus human behavior are being looked at here. Okay, more so this decade than other decades, the manipulation of human brain waves is a priority for the United States federal government. The electrical impulses that a person's brain gives out, well, we'll not say gives out, but the electrical impulses that a person's brain generates offer a direct route into a person's cerebral process. And a lot of these electromagnetic weapons and so forth could be used for good to understand the human brain more, but rather they're being used on people who I guess they thought they were going to be guinea pigs or something, or just unwitting human experiments that would one day just fall to their knees or fall to the ground or crack under the pressure, under all of this technology and all this personnel mobilization and all this thuggery that these stalkers use on a daily basis against singled out persons like myself. You got another thing coming if you think I am going to be your guinea pig or your human experiment or whatever it was that you thought Emmanuel Isaiah Smith was going to be. I don't remember anybody writing me a letter and saying, Mr. Smith, this is the CIA talking. We would like for you to volunteer or perhaps be a part of, as a partner, a program that we're working on that analyzes human behavior. It is of a top secret nature, and it would be for the duration of your life. Here are the benefits and here are the risks. At least at that point, I'd be able to make an intelligent decision as to whether or not this was something I'd want to participate in, but they don't. They simply monitor your behavior. They look at your vital statistics. They look at various other records you've generated over the course of your life. They look at your interactions with the people around you, and they go off of their opinions of you and so forth, and they decide themselves outside of a court of law who needs to be in a gangstalking campaign and who doesn't. End of story. Well, I hate that you guys walked into this with such hubris and such optimism, thinking it was going to be a good idea to put United States citizens in something like this extrajudicially, especially given our Constitution and the concept of a constitutional republic or a democracy. Okay, a country that allegedly respects people's inalienable rights. I hate that you implemented such a program such as this in a country such as this, because this program is already blown up in your faces. There's people talking about it. The news media don't want to talk about it because they don't want to embarrass you stalkers too bad. But Congress isn't talking about it because they're not sure how to politicize it yet. Hollywood ain't talking about it because it's possible a lot of the Hollywood actors and directors use gang stalking in various capacities, and they don't want to make each other look bad or lose out on ticket sales. No one in the athletic community is talking about it because they don't want to alienate their gang stalking fans that buy tickets and jerseys and baseball cards and all that stuff. So why alienate them? We'll take a gang stalker as a fan if they're paying good money to come watch us. So there is a financial element here. The American establishment doesn't want to alienate or embarrass the wrong people. Me, I'm gonna do it to you on a daily basis, because quite frankly, you've made an enemy out of me by obstructing my daily living. Excuse me. So as my enemy, I'm going to fight you, but I'm going to do it administratively. Now, a lot of these thugs you guys have been sending recently, you've been signaling to me, I'm talking to the federal liaisons here. A lot of these thugs you've been sending me recently, they're looking a little, ready, if that makes sense. So if it's hostile, violent, or belligerent combat you guys are looking for, well, you're talking to somebody who knows how to defend himself both physically and administratively. So y'all send those thugs around me with caution. And quite frankly, I'm sorry for the American taxpayer that they have to fund that stupid program you run. All right, we're going to move down to mind interface. It's also known as brain-computer interface. It is a direct communication pathway between the brain and an external device. It allows users to control machines or interact with technology using their thoughts or brain activity. BCI can be used to restore or enhance various functions for individuals with disabilities or to explore new ways of interacting with technology. It works using brain activity measurement using a process called electroencephalography, which is the same technology that's used in hospitals with encephalographs. You put a node on a person's head, and it has sensors on it, and then there's a wire connecting the node to a computer device. That computer device can monitor your brainwave activity because it's picking up on the electrical impulses that your brain is producing. So brain activity management or measurement is a part of mind interface, which is essentially, it uses encephalograph technology to allow people to control computerized devices with their brain, their thoughts, their brain waves, changes in their thinking, changes in their thoughts, etc. Because when your thinking changes, when your emotions change, when your mood changes and so forth, when your desires change, the electrical impulses in your brain changes as well. So those electrical impulses can be measured, monitored, and interacted with in a way that allows you to use your mind, your brain waves to interact with computerized equipment. You got signal processing, which is the raw brain signals that are then processed to extract meaningful information about the user's intended action. You have command translation, which is information translated into commands that can be understood by the connected device. And you have output device control, in which the commands are sent to the output device, a computer, a robotic arm, or a prosthetic, to perform the desired action. So you have people, amputees, and people who have lost their limbs in various capacities, using the mind interface technology to operate prosthetic limbs. Now, this type of technology can also be used to manipulate a person's thinking, to manipulate their mood, to manipulate a lot of things, and it's oftentimes done in a behind-the-scenes fashion by people who, quite frankly, don't have the character, class, or backbone to walk up to the person who they're doing that to, look them in the face, and show them their credentials. They'll never show me their credentials because they're too scared. They have these narratives that they make up. No, he's too unhinged. He's too hostile. Look at him. He's 6'5", 200 and something odd pounds. He's too big. He's too strong. He's too this. He's too that. I'm not going to walk up to him, not unless I can do it with a group of you. And maybe we could all ride past him on motorbikes. Maybe we could drive past him in a car. and hold our credentials out the window and speed off. Oh no, that's too dangerous. We're not going to do that either. All right, I'm going to move on down the line. We'll do synthetic telepathy and we'll close it. So synthetic telepathy is artificial telepathy known as synthetic telepathy or brain-computer interface communication, which refers to the technology that aims to facilitate communication through thought by interpreting brain activity and converting it into commands for devices or other forms of communication. This technology is used based on reading electrical signals from the brain using methods like electroencephalography. Now, synthetic telepathy is essentially an artificial intelligent technology in which a person's thoughts can be manipulated. And there was a study at Yale, if I'm not mistaken, in 1984, where one of their researchers actually invented a device that is capable of inducing emotions to a person remotely. And this is a matter of public record. This technology is documented. I've seen one of the machines myself. There's actually a picture of it on one of my YouTube posts. And it goes to show that the electrical impulses that a person's brain generates can be manipulated in ways to where that person's thought process can be manipulated. And I'll stop there. In summary, over the past 5 videos, you've seen sophisticated technology that's capable of altering a person's thoughts, their emotions, and as a component of their thoughts and emotions, their actions. You can cause a person to be active or inactive based